Welcome to Blue Glasses Math. In this podcast, we will explore how our self-perception as math teachers and learners influences our approach to life. Whether you identify as a math enthusiast or not, this podcast is for you. Are you a teacher, a parent, a school administrator, or a student? Join me as we shift our perspective on what it means to be a math person. Let's take a look. All right. Well, good morning and welcome, Marsha Familaro Enright, to Blue Glasses Math. I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you. I'm coming to you today from the blizzard of 2026, which I just felt like I needed to name it because it really is a historic event, I think, in my life and in the lives of many. So but welcome and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, no problem. So I just want to dive right in to what is it that you do right now. Maybe a better way to introduce yourself would be to have you introduce yourself than me and get our listeners a little bit of context about.
Sure. Right now I run an organization I created, which has been offering week-long programs in the summer to high school and college students aimed at giving them an optimal educational experience where they can really develop their reasoning powers, their ability to listen and communicate with other people, to think independently, to connect their knowledge with what they see in the world. And the program, I put everything I knew into the program to make it a great experience for that level of learning. But even I am surprised at what happens because the students develop this incredible energy and self-confidence over the week as they're thinking, they're learning, their abilities are expanded and validated. And they keep in contact with me. I mean, I've recently interviewed some of them I started in 2009, that are now in their 30s, and they talk to me about what they learned in the program they still use in their work as engineers or web designers or business managers. And I started that after a long career in Montessori education. Because when I was a kid, I loved school and wanted to learn everything and was frustrated by other kids goofing around until I realized that they were not getting learning the way they needed to get learning. And I thought, well, when I grow up, I don't want my children to have that experience. I want them to have experience in which they will continue to love learning. Because, you can barely stop a 2-year-old from learning, right? They will just keep exploring all the time. So what happens by the time that they're 8 or 9 and they don't want to go to school? Something's wrong with that. And so I had my eye out as I grew up for an educational system that would be good. And I came across some essays about the Montessori method when I was about 20. And I said, this sounds like what I want. And then I went and educated myself about the whole program. And I had my oldest child in a classic Montessori, we call children's house, but it's usually called a preschool. And when it came to elementary, there wasn't a good alternative. So basically, I and some other parents started a Montessori elementary school in 1990. And I ran that for many years. But my own interest in learning in teaching was for young adults. So that's how I got here. Oh, and now we're trying to expand into a full college program.
4-year. Awesome. Yeah. 4-year program.
Right now, as the intermediary, we're offering the summer program, but we're also offering a new program we developed called AI Proof You, which is kind of a hybrid of 3 days in person, 6 weeks online, and then 3 days in person. And it's aimed at students and young professionals to help them develop the abilities and the strengths that will make you capable no matter what kind of future there is in AI, because there's things that the AI can never do that humans can do.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be such an interesting conversation already. I took a bunch of notes just based on what you just said. So I always start by asking my guests what their math story is. And I think I'm very curious. You said that your school experiences, like I think you said you liked school, but you were distracted by all of the distractions of the other kids that maybe were not engaged. Do you ever recall anything in particular about math, about learning math? And it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go there.
I was fine with arithmetic. I mean, I had no problem with arithmetic. When I got to high school, I was in an advanced math class in geometry, and I remember taking the book and reading it and trying to follow the proof. And I would spend hours trying to understand this proof, and was completely frustrated. When I would go back to class, there'd be other kids up there, and they'd be doing the algorithms, they'd be doing the problems, no problem. And I'd be sitting going, I don't understand how they got from X to Y. Well, years later, I found out that my husband said to me, you know, in your book where you're reading the proof and it says, and now we will assume that, says that's where they're skipping over a whole bunch of steps. And I said, well, no wonder I couldn't follow it, because I wanted to understand the exact reasoning of how you got from X to Y to Z. And they were skipping over all that and just teaching you the algorithms. So that was a huge frustration for me. I remember in college, I took calculus, both differential and integral. And I remember being in the integral calculus class, you know, learning the algorithms, how to manipulate them and this and that. And the last class, the teacher shows us how you can use it. And I was like, oh, now I understand what this is about.
I'm laughing because it's the last class.
Right. I mean, what are they thinking when they do that?
Yeah.
I mean, there's some people, of course, I have my own theory that a lot of these people that are math teachers are the intuitive types when it comes to math. So they think everything is very easy to follow, and they get it. But there's a lot of the rest of us that don't have that same kind of intuition, and we need to know more about the exact reasoning process of how you got there, you know? And that they don't, and that a lot of us need more motivation to be interested in it. Because some people are just naturally, my son is an aerospace engineer, and his specialty is guidance and control systems, which is a very mathematical area. And he just loved math, like right from the beginning, and got it. And he was always doing the problems in his head, in a very idiosyncratic way. I remember him that he had a hard time making himself do them the kind of the traditional way, but he would get the answer. You know?
Yeah.
And so there's some people like that. Sorry.
That's okay.
And some people like that, but there's a lot of us that aren't. And we need to understand more what is the connection between these equations and reality.
I love that.
And then we're like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. And so both showing the embodiment of the equations in reality and knowing more of the history of, well, why did people even come up with this, makes that so much more motivational for the rest of us.
Yeah. Awesome. So, you know, it always, I never I am constantly surprised about how people have these sort of visceral reminders of what it felt like in math class when there was this disconnect, and it always comes back to the reasoning. And like, I didn't understand the reason why. And so some people are very good at being able to just plug and chug and just do the algorithm and move on. And then others, most of us need to understand the reason why. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that is interesting. So I think that brings us to your school experience and led you to think there's got to be a different way or a better way.
The thing is that the fact that I could not follow the proof in the book made me think that I could not reason mathematically. That there was something different about reasoning mathematically than other kinds of reasoning. I thought, well, there must be something deficient in me. And that's a terrible thing to feel about yourself. And I'm sure there's plenty of other people out there who have had that experience, and it makes them feel dumb. And that's super demotivating. So, what motivate do they have then to try to learn more math? It's bad.
Yeah. No, yeah. And you're tapping right into the part of the reason why I started this podcast, because it's it was about shifting our perspectives on what it actually means to think and do math, and that it can be very demoralizing, which is why students especially in traditional high school, are so in such a hurry to be like, am I finished with my math requirements? When can I be done? What can I be done? And I'm thinking, we're never done learning math, but that we've built a society around that you have this sort of like finish line everybody's trying to get to, except for people maybe like your son. But yeah.
Well, and there's a couple of problems. One is that I forgot what the first one was, but the second one is that there's so many jobs these days that really require mathematical reasoning.
Yes.
And you're keeping yourself out of it if you don't develop that ability. Oh, I know the other thing. And there's been such a push in the last 30, 40 years to make everybody conform to these standardized tests that the emphasis in school is often on the test rather than on the actual learning. So that's a huge problem too.
Yes. Even when the tests are somewhat constructed with, they say that they have a modeling and reasoning component in it, but there's a disconnect between what's happening in the classroom and what is supposed, but it's like, I don't know that's a question I have for anybody who's listening, is how do we even actually truly assess authentically and with validity reasoning? I don't think you can do that on a standardized test.
I don't think so either. No, I think it's very deficient. It's interesting. I was talking to the president of the Claremont colleges, Pomona, Harvey Mudd, those a few years ago, and he was saying what a problem they were having figuring out who they should accept or not, because all these standardized measures that they're using are not telling them enough about the person and whether that person is the right person for their college. Yeah. But the problem is, with all the emphasis on the standardized tests, it really drains the fun out of math or any of these other things you're studying, because everyone's studying for the test. You're not studying to actually learn the material.
Yeah. And I see that as I coach elementary school teachers, I see that all the time. It's like, yes, but we've got the benchmark. We've got the benchmark in 2 weeks, and they've got to be ready for the benchmark. Like, okay, but it's very hard, and it's not a judgment on teachers at all. It's more of it's a system that's putting these teachers in this position. So yeah.
Oh, all the money's tied to these tests, so that's a big emphasis.
Yeah, for sure.
And the thing I love about Montessori is it's an entirely different system. It's an entirely different approach to the child, to learning, and to math.
Can we talk about that? Talk to me more about Montessori, because I'm really curious and fascinated by.
So Montessori was the first woman doctor in Italy, and she worked with, her first job was working with autistic and retarded children, and she noticed that they played a lot with their food, and she figured out that it was because they had such a deficient environment that they had nothing else to stimulate them. So she studied what other educational theorists had come up with for the previous 200 years. This is late 19th century. And she made all these what we call materials in Montessori, but they're kind of like games that teach concepts. And she made these for her children in the clinic, and they did so well learning with them that they passed the state exam for normal children. And everybody was raving about this, and she was thinking, what the heck are normal children learning if they can pass the test? So then in 1907, a group of apartment building owners in a very poor area of Rome asked her to come and start a school there. She had become world famous because of her work and lecturing and all kinds of things. And she started this Montessori school for the factory workers' children there. And they were they were people from the country who they were illiterate, innumerate. They didn't know about cleanliness, all kinds of things like that. And she started it with these materials that she had developed and adding more. What's interesting is that there were a lot of wealthy women involved trying to support this effort, and they had bought a lot of toys for the children, and they put them in the classroom too. But the children didn't pay any attention to the toys. They were very focused on the materials. So after a year of this, the children were so transformed by the situation. They even she did a lot of measurements. She was very scientific, and so all the way along she was making observations and measurements on each of the children, and they literally got healthier, even though their diet didn't change.
What?
Yes, literally, it's amazing to read about. They literally got healthier. But it just shows you, I mean, she discovered the mind-body connection way back then, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so some of the materials, she became world famous. People from all over the world came. They started spreading the Montessori ideas. And the program is very different than traditional school because it's focused on the individual child. It's multi-age classrooms so that children have a wide range of materials to work on. The teacher observes each child and determines, well, where are they at in their learning and what materials should I show them how to use first, and gives us small lessons. Then the child can decide every day in what order he or she wants to do their work. Because remember, when you're an adult, is somebody telling you do this first, do that? No. You know that if you want to do X first, you're going to do it much better than if you don't feel like doing it. Because if you don't feel like doing it, you're going to fool around until you finally get yourself to do it, right?
Yes.
So anyway, there's many things about it, and it's not a free-for-all. People have a big misunderstanding about that. It's freedom in a structured environment. In other words, you have a lot of choice, but it's within limits. It has to do with whether you're doing work in class, are you behaving properly, all kinds of things like that. The curriculum goes not only through all the academic subjects, but also includes something we call practical life, which is how to dress yourself, how to keep things clean, what's the proper way to blow your nose politely, things like that. The math materials, since you want to focus on math, are amazing. Starting with 3-year-olds, we use beads to represent the decimal system. So a single bead to 9 are the units, 10 together is a 10 bar, 10 of those together is 100 square, 10 of those together is 1,000 cube. So you're getting the connection between the arithmetic and the geometry at the same time. And yeah, go ahead.
I just want to interrupt you there. So I heard you say from age 3, they have something physical with the beads that can help students understand the idea of decimal.
That's right.
And we start teaching decimals in the United States in grade 4.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
When kids are not 3 years old, they're like, I think they're like 10, 9 or 10. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so the children at the age of 3 are able to do with the beads, arithmetic problems into the thousands, maybe even the millions.
I'm looking it up right now. I'm buying them.
Yeah. And they work with the beads over and over, and then as they progress, they learn how to write. When they get to the point where they can do some writing, they start writing the numerals, and then we literally have hundreds of math materials in Montessori. One of my favorite, for some reason, I have a lot of friends that are physicists. And I've taken them, they've wanted to see the Montessori school, so I've taken them through the school, and they love the math materials. I know one in particular that attracts them is what we call the binomial cube.
Okay.
And this is something that a child can use from the time they're 3 or 4, and it's basically a puzzle, a cubic puzzle made up of smaller cubes and rectangular solids that represent the terms of binomial equation.
Oh my gosh, I'm looking at it right now. It's beautiful.
And the great thing about it is that the child learns to put it together as a 3 or 4-year-old. Then they learn to start writing down what the name of each solid is. A squared B or C cubed.
Yeah.
And then when they come to learning algebra, they have a real object in their mind.
So, sorry, what age do they start doing that?
Which?
Like when you just said that the students start naming X
when
squared.
they start writing,
When they start writing.
Yeah, so
okay.
maybe, 4 or 5. It depends on, some of the children learn to write very early, because one of the things Montessori discovered is that they much prefer to learn to write before they learn to read. And the reason being, I think, because it's something they're doing rather than taking in what other people are doing. So the child is got this tremendous motive to gain mastery over the world and to learn things that other people are learning. I mean, it's funny. Aristotle said humans are the most imitative of animals. And if you watch a little child, they want to do everything you're doing, right? So they're constantly trying to master the world, and they love anything like that does it. And and writing, they are mastering something before they're reading, and then they learn to read a lot just after learning how to write. So anyway, yeah, we literally have hundreds of math materials. Whether we have a Pythagoras board, we have red and blue rods that help to embody whole number. Just chains of beads to help you learn skip counting, like 6, 12, 18. Just if you go online, there's so many images you can see now, and also videos about how the materials are used.
I'm fascinated. And here's why, a couple of reasons why I'm fascinated. So I'm currently doing some consulting for a company called Innovamat, which is a Spanish company. They're a math partnership company is the best way I can describe it. They do have a core program that they go into schools, and then they have an intervention program that they bring into schools too. And one of the main manipulatives in this program is, they call it the bead string. Mm-hmm. And it's exactly as you're describing it.
Oh, it's a Montessori material.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Right. It's 100%. And the reason why I asked you to back it up about when students start referring to x squared plus or x squared b or whatever and you also said something where students want to write before they read, according to what Montessori believes and has learned. It's because, right, something that they can own, something that they have ownership over.
Right.
And I think this is a big problem in schools, is that it's the teacher is owning. I just had a conversation the other day with an admin, actually, and we were talking about a sample of student work. And this admin looked at me at one point and said, they can't reason. And I won't get into the conversation too much but I was absolutely surprised that an administrator would say they can't reason. I'm thinking, but as humans, we are born to reason. That's what we do. I mean, think about what's the favorite question that a 4 or 5-year-old wants to ask? Why?
Exactly.
Why, mommy? Why, daddy? Why? Right?
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So Montessori, and I'm thinking about how it must make students and children feel. Does Montessori goes up to 6th grade? Or what grade?
No, it can go up to high school.
It can go to high school. Okay. Yeah. In my local area, we only have ones that go to 6th grade.
And I mean, basically, what I'm doing with I think I mentioned, now I'm working on a college program. There's an expanded version of the summer program I have. The summer program is called The Great Connections.
Okay.
And the college we're working on is called Reliance College. And it's like a hugely expanded version of what we're doing in the summer. So I'm bringing Montessori philosophy up to the young adult level.
Yeah.
Because the philosophy is really about, what do humans need at different levels of development? What kind of learning? What ways? What are their motivations? And how do we incorporate that in the learning that they're doing in school?
And when you say, what do humans need, I am imagining you are not meaning what content do students need to learn at XYZ level. And I mean, when I mean content, I mean like, by the end of 3rd grade, they must know how to multiply. By the end of 5th grade, they must be able to operate with fractions with different denominators. That's not, I don't think, what you're referring to when you say. So can we dig in there a little bit?
Sure.
Like, what is it that human children need?
So human children between the ages of 0 and 6 need a lot of sensory motor work. They're developing their senses, their abilities to move around, and that's how the learning needs to be embodied in concrete objects in order to help them really learn. Just think about the way children are always touching and feeling and smelling and putting things in their mouth, well, especially the babies, and all that kind of thing. So you want to create an environment in which they have those opportunities to learn that way. And each child has their own inner guide about what they need to learn when. Just like this is a recognition that individuals are really different, right? And they learn at different, they have different interests, different abilities, and they learn at different paces. On top of that, I just want to mention it is a huge mistake, the whole approach to learning that thinks that learning is linear. It is not linear. Learning tends to be in jumps and starts. There's something about the way the human mind is organized. Just like anybody has this experience where they have a problem, they can't figure it out, they think about it, they think about it, they think about it, and they can't get anywhere with it, right? And then they go to sleep, and the next morning they have the answer.
Yes.
Okay? That's a jump. That's not a linear solution, right?
Yep.
Well, in general, learning is like that. And so you have to be understanding that the children are interested in different things at different times. And if you can hook into their motivation about learning, you're golden. You're going to really help them learn much more quickly. And you have to be aware that they're interested in different things in different time, and present them with the materials at the right moment. So, for example, say a child really, really loves dinosaurs, but they don't like math. So a great thing to do is you go out in the parking lot and you say, oh, how big is an apatosaurus versus a Tyrannosaurus Rex? Let's figure that out. And this can hook the child into being interested in math because it's related to what their interest is. And this is true of humans in general. If you can relate what you want them to learn with their own interest, you're going to get much farther. And this is something I think is really important, is that relating whatever you're learning to history and making the history colorful, like why did this guy work on this problem? Why did he come up with this solution? Or with your own life. You know, seeing, for example, I know one of our Montessori teachers had a brilliant material she developed in which she showed people how design was embodied in the real world and how it was related to geometry. And so she would have you look at different objects in the world and see where there were curves and circles and light and shadow, and how you could then translate that into something that was a design, you know, like a wallpaper or a clothes or something like that. And that engages your interest so much more. Or if you have a story about that's of human interest. Well, I guess what I was saying about, well, why did Newton develop calculus? You know, what was he? He was a very unusual person in that he was naturally interested in mathematizing what he saw in the world, you know, but just following their course of how they got interested in something can be very engaging. So
yeah, and I think what it comes down to is you're talking about over and over again. The through line I hear is listening to students, listening to children, like paying attention to what they need, which is so the opposite of how we're doing school right now. It's like completely opposite. And I think we're at a breaking point where I think it's going to take several years to break, but I feel like there's been some like chisels in the ground for chipping it away, because I always wondered, you know, from a personal perspective, I wish I had sent my daughter to Montessori school. And if she's listening to this, which she probably isn't, she's 20 years old, she's in college now, and she's loving it. And you know why she's loving it? Because she's studying equine science, and she is in the barn. They go into the classroom, they learn a little bit, and then they go into the barn, they try it out.
Perfect.
And most of her, in fact, this semester, she has every single class is at the barn, and because she's checked off all of her boxes on her like regular classes she has to take in a classroom. But her classroom, she's in a lab basically all the time, and the lab is the stable. And because she's interested in it, and it was so hard to get her through public school. In fourth grade, she understood the area model for multiplication, which is, it's like the box method, right? She understood it so well. And what happened was the teacher said, no, okay, we're going to do the box method on Wednesday, and on Thursday you're going to learn the real way to multiply. Several years later, and I was not like, I had to be careful about where I stood my ground with teachers, right? And I did go in and we talked about it, and the teachers said, yes, but the fifth grade teachers want them multiplying the regular way, the traditional model. I'm fine. And I said to her, well, my daughter will be using whatever method works for her, and that's the way it's going to be, because, and not in a mean way, but we have to do that, because otherwise she will check out. Because she said, well, she's staring out the window all day long. I'm like, well, she's staring out the window because she's not engaged. She's not engaged because she's being told she has to, like, literally do the steps. Years later, she's in Algebra 2. And the teacher introduces binomial multiplication with the area model. And she says, Mom, this is what we were doing in 4th grade. I'm like, yep. So she's like, so I was right. I was like, yes, honey, you were right. And not saying you were right and the teacher was wrong, but the teacher didn't know, didn't have the training, didn't have the foresight. But I bring up the point that I wish I had sent for sure my daughter to Montessori school, because I think she would have benefited so much from the philosophy. But now that I do have teenagers and 20-year-olds, I'm fascinated to hear more about the summer program and the college.
So the summer program, the Great Connections, is a combination of carefully chosen. What we do is we have specially designed Socratic seminars in which the teacher is the guide, but not the expert in whatever we're reading. The teacher is helping the students learn how to understand the reading themselves. And we do readings across the domains, so from physics to poetry, history, economics, literature. And what happens is in the classes, in the specially designed Socratic seminars, the students have to use reason and evidence for everything that they're saying in the discussion. They have to listen very carefully to the other people and respond to what the other person in the discussion says. And what's interesting about it is you get to hear how different people reason about the same material this way, and you learn different strategies for reasoning. So I like to say we help them develop their minds into a Swiss Army knife.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, because they can have all kinds of different approaches. So we do these Socratic seminars, different texts. We usually have a theme, like this summer coming. It's the last week of July. It's called Reason and Love. And all the readings are picked to be related to the topic of love. We also do things like watch movies and then talk about them afterwards. How did we understand them? What did we get out of them? Why did we think what we did about them? We do. I like to try to connect whatever we're doing in the classroom to what's going on in the world. So, for example, we're here in Chicago. I'll give a talk about a short talk about the history of Chicago and why, because of the fire, we're a big architecture center, and we'll talk about architecture and styles of architecture. And then we'll go for an architecture walk. We'll walk around the city, see how it's laid out, learn about all these. Chicago has got tremendous amount of man-made features. For example, they raised the city literally 20 feet. In the 1890s. They reversed the course of the Chicago River. They made 29 miles of beaches where it was just a swamp. I mean, things like that. So and then getting them to think about, well, how the heck did all this stuff get here? Because people tend to take for granted what's around them, and they don't ask, geez, what amount of work went into this? And, look at this amazing skyscraper. Not how hard was it to build, but what about all of the tools that had to be designed and created to go into that building, and what about the materials, and how did they get the materials, and what about who did that? All this like amazing aspects of our modern life to just raise awareness about it. And we'll do other things like improv, comedy games.
Oh, that's fun.
Improv started here in Chicago, and it's very big in the city. And if for anybody who doesn't know, improv is a kind of comedy where you don't have a script. You just have like a scenario, and then you have to make up what you're doing as you're going along and even transform it. And the basic principle is yes and. In other words, whatever crazy thing the other person is doing, you're going to go along with it. and it makes it funny, So I like to do that for two reasons. One is because it's very similar to what you have to do in the Socratic seminar. Whatever thing the other person is saying, you have to try to understand it and go along with it and build on it, to get deeper into understanding what you're learning. Excuse me. And then the second thing is, at the end of the week, we go to a professional improv show. So you get to see what the professional comedians do with it,
That's fun.
And I like to bring in accomplished professionals to talk to the students about their career and how did they get into it and how do they navigate it, because for a couple of reasons. One is people tend to know only what they grew up with or what's famous, in the world in terms of professions. And there are loads of other professions out there. Those of us. So I'll have a baritone singer, I'll have a financier, I'll have a factory owner, or I'll have somebody that owns a boatyard, and we'll go see the boatyard, and we might go to the factory. So again, and the second reason why I do it is that I think today there's so many negative messages out there for young people about, oh, the world is going to hell in a handbasket, and humans caused it, and we can't get along with each other, and all this kind of thing, that they're looking for inspiration. This is their level of development. They're looking to see what is going to happen with their life? What is their place in the world? What can they bring to life? How can they navigate it? And if they think everything's negative, that's really demotivating. And it's not true,
No,
so,
it's not true.
Right. So right. I like to bring in people who did well, and they're happy about what they did, and they're excited, and they had problems, and they had a lot of struggles, but they made it through. So that's just some ideas about what we do in the summer.
And I think you touched on something about the doom and gloom, that's the picture that's painted for kids, and I think drama sells. Drama sells. People want that. My mom is 81. She lives by herself, and she's addicted to what I call the disaster channel. I'm like, Mom, turn off the news. Just turn it off. I'm not saying you shouldn't be informed, but just read your little newspaper and maybe watch an hour of the news, but then turn it off. And I think it's because the drama sells, and so then kids, because they're teenagers and young people, they see that drama. And I think it's so wonderful what you're doing is you're exposing them to other things. And you mentioned something earlier, maybe it was before we even hit record, about something that a program that's called AI Proof You.
Yes. Right,
Let's talk about that real quick before we wrap up, because I think this is really good.
So I just want to say one thing about the drama. Mm-hmm. Your mom needs to follow a website called humanprogress.org.
Humanprogress.org. Okay.
It has all of the positive news, the amazing news about where we are, how we got here, how great life is. I mean, people do not appreciate how great life is these days. They do not appreciate it,
People like to complain.
Yeah.
People like to complain.
And the fact that it's funny, we have this kind of dichotomy. There's like a cadre of people who are super pumped about how great the world is, how advanced we are technologically, where we're going. We're going to go to space. I mean, Elon Musk kind of embodies this,
Yes.
And then there's all these other people who everything's doom and gloom, and humans ruin everything, and have this very negative attitude. So I'd like to get the kids to know more about the optimists in the world, and how the data actually supports the optimists. So anyway, what we're starting in March is a new program called AI Proof You, in which so there's certain abilities which humans have and will always be needed regardless of what happens with AI. Excellent reasoning and judgment, wisdom, creativity, and conscientiousness about what they're doing. And so we've created this class which not only develops that, but also helps them look at, well, what is AI? How can we use it? What other things do I need to know about the world in order to navigate my life well and my career? How can I position myself to do well in the AI future? And each person will also do a project related to that and get feedback from us and the other people in the group. So it's going to be 3 days in person and 6 weeks online, and then 3 days in person.
That's pretty cool. So you bring it back together at the end. And, and I love the idea that, we can't hide from AI. And so, but so you're not saying not to use AI. You're saying this is the way that AI, I'm sorry, I'm distracted by the snow because it is like a whiteout conditions right now. And I am not cutting this out because, oh my gosh, I just got distracted by, I can't believe it just got worse just a second ago.
Okay.
Anywho, so I think this whole conversation is so fascinating to me because I think, and a notification just came across my, I'm getting distracted by all the things, but it's important to mention that a notification just came up on my screen. I guess there's a podcast that just came out, and the title of the podcast, ready for this? How to Be a Better Human. Like, you can't make this up, that this came
Yeah.
across right
Yeah.
now, because I think that's what this is about, right? This is about how to be a better human and know that being human is how we need to teach, how we need, right? Because I think that we keep saying the system's broken, and I wonder, is the system broken because we're not paying attention to what humans need?
I do think that. I think that's a big problem. And, it's interesting, the move into using digital tools to try to teach children, the data does not support that. Humans do best when they learn from other people and they interact with the world.
So I was in a class recently, and I'm going to do a newsletter on this, that we were playing a game with dice with fractions. It was it fourth grade, third grade? I think it was third grade. They had to compare fractions, right? And when you're in third grade, according to the Common Core standards, it's the same denominator, right? So they had to have, 1/3 compared to 2/3 or whatever. And they're rolling dice and putting in and making the fractions so that they could compare them. I had asked the teacher if I could just borrow 5 or 6 students to teach her how to play this game so that she could see how to play this game with the whole class. And so she's brought these small group of students over there playing the game. And then when she said, okay, now it's time for you to go back and get on the digital thing that I won't say the name of, but it was like a digital program where they are supposed to be learning. Student said, I could do this all day. And he said, this is the last thing I want to do is go back to my computer. And he was 8 years old. And I'm thinking, well, why? Because he was playing a game where he was interacting with with another student. I was listening to what they were doing, and the teacher was listening. So we were learning about what they knew about the size of fractions. And if the pieces, if the denominator is a bigger number, then the pieces are smaller, and back and forth. We were getting so much data on those kids in that moment when they were playing for maybe like 8 minutes. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And we think, right. So I agree with you about the digital tools. I think we've gone way too far. The pendulum has swung too far. And then the students don't feel like there's not this relational piece with another human. It's like the little avatar talking to you.
Yeah, and it's interesting, in a Montessori classroom, the students do not have to work with each other. They each have their own space. It might be a rug on the floor, it might be a table, but they can if they want to. And consequently, most of them work with each other, and they talk. And Montessori said, we learn so much from each other as adults by talking. Why do we make children be silent in school? So as long as they're, mostly focusing on their work and related things, then it's fine, And
yes, and you're giving, and it sounds like the tasks are purposeful. It's not just talking to talk, because we do have a lot of that now in school. Turn and talk, and it's like, okay, are we talking about something that's worth talking about, or are we just doing it because the teacher says we have to turn and talk to somebody? And I'm guilty of that too, because I say turn and talk all the time.
Oh yeah,
but I try to make it meaningful. Okay, perfect. So, as we wrap up this conversation, I think this is fascinating, and I think you've got a fascinating perspective on how school needs to be, and I appreciate that you're offering all these opportunities for young adults, and I really appreciate that. So my question to you as we wrap up is, what gives you hope right now? Right, we talked about the humanprogress.org, but what gives you hope right now in the education space?
Oh, I have to say, the one good thing, maybe there's more, but the one good thing that came out of the pandemic was that parents woke up to what was going on at school. Because I've been telling parents about this for years, and they just remember it the way they went to school or whatever, and they didn't know what was happening. And now there's just so many parents demanding something different or exiting the traditional programs and looking for something better for their children, and I'm so happy about that. I also see a lot of developments in, for example, classical education. One of the things that was the powers that be had edged out of education was studying the classics, and they had their various reasons for doing that. But the classics are the books that were so great, such great writers, such great thinkers, that people studied them for thousands of years, and they still affect us today. Those are the writers that made our world what it is. And so if you're ignorant of that, you can't understand what's going on in the world in the same way. And I'm really happy to see that there's a lot of programs coming back, both for young people and even for adults, there's a huge resurgence of interest in studying classics. So
awesome. Well, thank you. So if people wanted to connect with you, where should they go? And we'll put all this in the show notes.
Sure thing. So look at our website, reliancecollege.org. That's reliance, like self-reliance. And contact us through there. I'm happy to answer any questions, talk to people. Please take a look at our program, The Great Connections. It's in the summer. It's one of the programs on our website. And our AI Proof You, our new AI Proof You. I'd love to have any young person who's interested come to the program.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Marsha.
Thank you, Pam.
Really,
I really appreciate it.
Really great to get to know you.
You too.
Welcome to Blue Glasses Math. In this podcast, we will explore how our self-perception as math teachers and learners influences our approach to life. Whether you identify as a math enthusiast or not, this podcast is for you. Are you a teacher, a parent, a school administrator, or a student? Join me as we shift our perspective on what it means to be a math person. Let's take a look. Okay, so Marsha, we were talking about Montessori, and is there a particular moment when you were teaching in Montessori, or well, you weren't a teacher, you were the founder of the school.
Yeah.
Okay, you're the head of the school. So you're the head of the school in Montessori, and you're in the classrooms checking out what the kids are doing, and you're thinking, was there ever a moment where you were maybe doubtful about whether it was working or not?
Yeah. I was there. There were times in which I wondered whether the particular children were understanding what they were supposed to be learning. For example, I'd watch a lesson being given, and I was like, I hope this child understands it. But the beauty about the Montessori program is each child is working on their own work. They're not competing with the other children. Humans are naturally competitive, so what happens is, if a child is doing X and he sees the other one doing Y, he wants to do Y too. And in that way, the competition goes in, but they're not directly competing with each other. They're competing with themselves to do the best that they can to master the materials of what they're doing. So no matter what a child's difficulties or what their abilities, they're working at their own pace, and then they're learning all the way along. And they have a tremendous work ethic because of it. They develop a tremendous work ethic.
It sounds to me like they're learning to learn. They're learning. Well, that phrase there could mean lots of things, right? They're learning how to learn, but they're also learning they're learning in the goal of learning, not in learning because Chapter 8 test is coming up on Friday.
Absolutely. There's nothing like that. No, there's nothing like that. And so it's interesting. What happens is children who have difficulties, I've seen many children in the Montessori school. We tend to attract children who are artistically inclined because they don't do well in traditional school. And they often have a problem with dyslexia in one way or the other. I mean, I've come to think that it's something about the way they visualize the world that makes it hard for them to see those things as just like these abstract symbols.
Yes.
I think it's something like that.
Yes.
But anyway, what happens is they have this tremendous work ethic. So even though they have those problems, when they get to high school, and you know how children go through this in adolescence, they kind of wake up and become more self-aware, more self-conscious about what they're doing.
Yes.
They end up having this tremendous work ethic and self-awareness about themselves and they're good at organizing themselves. And in high school, they do fine. In fact, we had a couple of boys who I was really worried about. And in high school, the one became the president of the class, and he went on to become a illustrator on an LA film company, and his brother went on to become a designer at Google. I mean, you cannot predict this, right?
I know.
We had a boy who came to our class in fourth grade, our school in fourth grade, and couldn't read. And he was able, the Montessori teacher was brilliant at the way she helped him learn how to read. We use movable letters, movable alphabet, and some other things. And he went on to become, he's a world famous video game designer. And I was talking to him recently. He said, he always visualizes when he does anything in math, he visualizes the math materials.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's like being in it for the long game. I think that's sort of the theme here also, is not feeling like you need to just get to the end of chapter 7 or chapter 8 or whatever. It's being mistake. Yeah. It's a trust thing.
And Montessori had this phrase, he said, the mystery of the child. You don't know how they're developing. They have like an naturally biological inner plan of development. And so what you want to do is create as rich an environment as possible with principles, like I said, freedom in a structured environment of limits, and then help them develop in along their path.
Amazing.